Let's go over some tips and tricks for free motion quilting on your sewing machine. Welcome, I do sewing and DIY related content, and today we are going to be doing some tips and tricks for free motion quilting on your home sewing machine. So the different items you may need, such as like a presser foot, as you can see here, as well as why do people use those gloves. We're going to be getting into all of it. So the first way that I started off doing this was because I bought this multifunctional kit off Amazon. It had 32 different presser feet and had this darning foot low shank was one of the options. And what this allows you to do is it lets you do that free motion quilting and sewing without having to have like pressure on your fabric the whole time. So the way this works is it attaches to that little bar on your sewing machine so that when the stitch goes down, it does apply a slight pressure, and then when the needle goes back up, it allows there to be flexibility and movement in your fabric. Now there's different types of these presser feet that you can get, but this is the one I had the most luck with. Now for the gloves, I got these off Amazon as well, and what they do is they allow you to have a little more traction on your fabric. So the tips of the fingers are actually rubberized so that it will hold onto your fabric better. You put your hand in and it allows you to move your fabric around. I also really like these, as you don't have to worry if you have any like lotions or oils on your hands. It just adds another level of protection between your hands and the fabric since you are going to be manipulating and working it so much. Now the only other thing you really need for this is you need to have your quilt. So for this, the quilt is 2 pieces of fabric and then your batting in between, so making that nice sandwich. And then this will be what you're doing your free motion quilting on, and it allows you to have, you know, like it's connecting all 3 of those pieces so that you can add binding and you're able to use this quilt for whatever purposes you're going to be using it for. So I found it really simple. I've done this multiple times now and I actually really enjoyed the process, and I think that it can be really creative and allow you to play around with the fabric as well as the pattern. Now let's talk about the sewing machine part. So as you can see here, I have the regular presser foot on my sewing machine, and it does have this portion that I need to unscrew to take off to apply that darning foot. And once I have it unscrewed, as you can see, I'm lifting up the presser foot a little bit so that it gives me a little more room, and then I'm going to attach the new foot that I'm going to be using. So it has that little white plastic portion on the side. You can see that silver bar is hitting that other bar up at the top, and then I'm just going to screw this on. Be sure to also use a screwdriver to make sure it's nice and tight. Now on the back, you'll see that this is where the feed dog controller is. You want to turn those off. And then finally, you want to make sure that your needle is set up to be exactly in the center. So as you can see on here, my presser foot has that hole in the center for the needle to go through, so you want to make sure that needle is going down through it. Now the next part of free motion quilting, which I did not know and found out the hard way, is you want to be sure that your machine is clean. And what I mean by this is you want to make sure that bobbin area is very clean in your sewing machine. So as you can see, I have been doing a lot of sewing, mine is dirty, so you just want to make sure you're getting in there, cleaning out all that lint. You can use a Q-tip to do this. There's little brushes you can do as well, just making sure that everything is nice and clean. If it's not clean, it will end up kind of gunking up that bobbin thread, and then this can cause issues where you're not able to sew, and then you have to go through later and really have to clean everything out again. So just making sure when you start at the beginning, your machine is nice and clean, then putting everything back on the way that it was so that you're able to then really get started and get going. Now for the bobbin, I would highly recommend having 1 or 2 full bobbins available, as this does use a lot of thread. So having that extra bobbin just allows you to have more time so that if it does go out, you're not having to pause everything and then refill your bobbin. I know some people like to do that though as a break for their hands. So now what I'm going to talk about very quickly is just it's very important that everything is threaded right. So when I'm putting my presser foot down here, you see I have my fabric, I'm still able to move it around. And that's the point of free motion quilting, is that we're able to move our fabric wherever we go. Now what I forgot to show here is you want to bring your needle down and then make sure it connects to your bobbin thread and pull that bobbin thread up through the fabric as your first stitch. And the reason you want to do this is you want to make sure the bobbin thread is all good, it's all ready, and you don't run into any issues with it. If you notice at the back that, you know, your bobbin thread is really kind of tangled up, it's not sewing correctly, most likely it's because you did not actually bring that bobbin thread up to begin with, and so that both threads are on the top of your fabric. Now as you can see here, I've sped this up some just to show you some of the fun patterns that you can do with this. Now the faster you go, the shorter the stitches will be, and then the slower you go, you know, the longer your stitches will be depending on what your pattern looks like. And some people have different preferences for how they want to do this. You know, they press their pedal foot all the way down to have the machine go as fast as possible. This is sort of some designs that I was playing around with. We have some squiggles, we have some loops. It's just really fun getting to explore what you can do with your machine. Now what I didn't talk about was the stitch length. Some videos I've seen have said to put this down to 0. My machine was not able to do that. So I just keep it at that normal 2.5, and then depending on my speed is then how I'm able to get the design and the look that I'm going for. But if your machine is able to go down to 0, maybe you play around with what that does versus what, you know, different stitch lengths would do. So just some troubleshooting tips in case you made it all the way this far and still having issues. First, always check your bobbin, make sure that it is threaded correctly, and then when you do start that first stitch, you're bringing it all the way up through your fabric. Next, if you run into issues with your needle, such as needle breaking, this can be because you are pulling your fabric along the way, and this can occasionally break your needle. If you need to use a more thick needle, such as like a 90 instead of an 80, you could definitely look into that. There are different size quilting needles available. Then finally, if you start to notice that your stitches, you can start to see the bobbin through the quilt, play around with the tension on your machine, but a lot of that is just kind of trial and error for what works with your machine and what doesn't work. This was what I learned though with my time of free motion quilting. I really enjoy it, and I'm going to be playing around so much more with different patterns. But if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, let me know your tips, and let me know what you want to see next. Thanks for watching.